Okay.
So I'm going to go look. It says we're live. So I'm going to verify the Zuckerberg of that. Facebook. Hi, good morning. It feels like a Monday to me because I just got back from vacation. I went to Laguna Beach, so that's why I have that up there to pretend I'm still at Laguna. Yeah. So now I'm back and I'm so tickled to bring you today's living legend. She doesn't think she is, but I think she is. She's making big strides and she's hitting the pavement. You know, all them cliche things. She's doing it. Today in the other square, forget about this square. That square is what's important on Comic Spot. This was created to vet out veterans of comedy. And today you have one. And her name is Amanda Cohen. Let me read you the intro that she sent to me so that I get it right, lest I should try to remember anything. She was a top 16 finalist in the World Series of Comedy 2 years in a row. Okay? It bears repeating because she did 2 years in a row. Top 16 finalists in the World Series of Comedy 2 years in a row. Yep. Hosts a lot of Zoom shows for flappers. That is no small feat. Has Zoomed at Nowhere Comedy Club and produced three Weird Al fan conventions. I'm a fan of Weird Al. I'm a fan of Amanda Cohen. Let's bring her to you right now on Comic Spot. Welcome, Amanda Cohen. Woo!
Thank you. And is this the wrong time to point out that it's pronounced Cohen?
Oh, is it Cohen? Did I say
I'm so
Cohen? Thank you.
Either way, it works for
You
me.
know that I'm half Jewish and it's the wrong half, obviously.
Oh, I don't think there is a right half, but okay.
Yes, I was never brought up in a synagogue and I
Neither was I.
apologize.
Neither was I. I have a whole bit about being an atheist, and because everyone is always, my whole life, everyone has assumed I'm Jewish because of the name. Was not raised Jewish, just got one of the most Jewish names there is. So, yeah.
Yes, I'm a military veteran, and my sister caught me yesterday saying veteran. And she said,
Well, that's on you. I can't.
well, let's talk about you. Where did you grow up? How funny were you as a little child?
I was not funny at all. I was a very depressed little child. I think. Honestly, if I I think if they had been better about flagging depressed children back in the day, I might have been helped a lot earlier. But I wasn't. So here we are. I wasn't funny, but I was brought up with a lot of comedy, like a lot of comedy. My dad, huge comedy fan. So I was raised, literally raised, listening to Frank Zappa and yeah, Monty Python and a lot of Firesign Theater. There's a lot of albums I can still pretty much do by heart. Um,
What?
and
That's so
yeah, I was
cool.
never into like really popular music or anything. Like the first album I got was all comedy music. And I had Monty Python albums, and that was just, normal for me.
Wow. So your dad had one great sense of humor in order to
Still
instill
does.
that.
He still does. Well, I mean, I didn't know this, but before I was born, my parents, all their in jokes were basically Lenny Bruce jokes. And, we still, to this day, we quote him, out of context, of course. I mean, like growing up, it was very normal. Like, well, what do you want for dinner? A chiclet, a fig Newton, which is a Lenny Bruce quote from a bit called Lima, Ohio, which I know very well now, but at the time I didn't. So it's still, a chiclet, a fig Newton is that means what do you want to eat? It's just
That's
how
so
we did
cool. That's really.
it.
I grew up watching all the great Jewish comedians. I never, I'm sure Zappa, I'm sure a lot of the ones you're mentioning were Jewish too, but I was
No,
more.
Frank Zappa was Italian.
I just watched the regular run of the mill Jewish ones, when they got done with the Borscht Belt and went on TV.
Yeah, well, I actually, in a different side of my family actually owned a hotel in the Catskills called the Concord. It wasn't like, we didn't inherit or anything, but it was, some cousins. So we stayed there a couple times when I was growing up. And the last time we stayed there, I saw Alan King live,
No
like
way.
in the Catskills, where he belongs. They actually still had knockers on the tables.
Oh my
That's how long ago that was. So yeah.
What was it like watching Alan King live? What age was it?
Um,
Or am I allowed to
it was
ask?
pretty misogynist, actually. I mean, that it was at the time it was the early 80s, and he was doing jokes from the 50s and 60s. He had a bit where he talked about well, I mean, he was doing modern material, but it was still from this whole, jaded 60s perspective. I remember he had a bit about uh, cars having chairs that you could, move back and forth, and that it would be like a trash compactor. You could just squish the trash in the back. But he was talking about, moves up, it down, and then he goes, "You don't even need a broad in the car." It's
Oh
like,
my
oh,
gosh.
okay, that's where we are now.
Oh my gosh.
Great. And the audience loved it because honestly, it was funny. It was just, the language is a little questionable.
Yes. It wouldn't fly nowadays. But
No, I do not respond well to anyone calling chicks broads.
I don't either.
That's a Weird
I
Al quote, actually. That's from
is
his
it?
movie. That's a quote in UHF, which I love. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like the way that comedy has gone towards treating women with respect.
Well, that had a lot to do with women actually doing comedy.
Yes.
That said, I mean, let's see, Rusty Warren, not strictly a comedian, but a humorous performer. She did parody albums. She has, she has songs where she refers to women as broads, but it's the language of the day. So, yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. So you grew up in a funny household. You were exposed to the best of the best. And then at some point in your life, in school, were you exposed to drama or acting or
Yeah,
comedy?
I was in a high school, I'm sorry, I was in an elementary school play around, I don't know, third grade, and I was terrible. But it was basically, the 4 or 5 kids who wanted to do a play were in the play. And I remember how bad I was, not just because I was, young, but I just had no concept of how a stage worked. Like, my first line was about how lovely it was out here, wherever we were having a picnic. And my instinct was literally backwards. When I was saying how lovely it was, I was looking at the painting we had on the wall, the backdrop of trees and, leaves and thinking, oh, I should be looking at the pretty part when I'm describing how pretty it is out here. So I'm literally facing the back wall going, what a lovely place for a picnic this is. It took me many years to learn how to not do that.
Well, you have a lot of stage presence now. I caught you on a Wednesday competing at Steve McAnally's at Roland Rick Barbecue in Vegas.
Which I,
And,
I love, indoors and out. Yep. Although
and
I got to
you,
say the outdoor shows were much bigger. They were a lot of fun.
they
And they
are
still are. I mean,
still.
I guess he's still doing that. I don't know if he's moved inside. Vegas is confusing. I don't know what they're doing right now, but they did open up too soon. I am a Joe. But
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly hoping that it isn't too soon, but time will tell. The outdoor shows are safer for me because, that's how I feel.
they're safer for everyone, and it's what they should be doing. And people don't realize that Vegas has winter too. So yeah, we were all bundled up doing shows, but yeah, it was fun.
You
Really
took it
fun.
on like a rock star. Didn't you win that night?
Oh yeah, that night that you saw me, I had won at the the semifinals. I won a round at World Series of Comedy,
Yes.
and that was a great show. And then that Friday or Saturday, I came back from the finals, and boy did I eat it! I ate it so hard I broke a tooth.
Wow. You literally broke a tooth?
No, not literally, but I ate it really hard. It was bad. It was
Got
really
it.
bad.
That was a tough room over there at the LA Comedy Club because you didn't get to watch other performers, right? You had to walk in cold.
Yeah, it was very their level of quarantine, or rather their COVID protocol was questionable. Like their line wasn't spaced out and the audience was distant from the stage but not really from each other, and I don't believe masks were required inside the club. They were outside the club. And in fact, the winner of the event did test positive for COVID. So,
Whoa.
yeah, I'm, in my opinion, I didn't get COVID, therefore I'm a winner.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, it was rough. But yeah, I did very poorly in that last show. But the first one, the one you saw me after, the Wednesday night one, that was fun. That was your fun.
Yes, that was great. You came on like you came on like Muhammad Ali onto the stage.
I don't know. Oh, you mean this whole thing? Yeah, that's a habit. I don't know when I got into that habit, but yeah, I often, will come on like, yeah. I think partly just because I think I want the audience's attention before I get on stage.
Me too.
That's a habit I think I started when I was at doing shows at Zany's in Chicago, because they also have an entrance through the audience. You have to come up through the audience. And I always found that when I was watching other comics, if it wasn't someone I knew, I would kind of try to spot them before they went up. And I think when I go up, I'm like, I want no mistake. This is the comic you're looking for. Here I am. This is me. But I think I overdid it on the second show on Friday, the one where I lost. I think it came across as really, what is the word I'm looking for? Yeah, I'm getting older and I'm losing words in my brain.
No, I know what you're saying, because somebody could misinterpret that if they want to.
Yeah, it was very prideful. It was very arrogant is the word I'm looking for. I was very arrogant in this, so I have to kind of watch that.
Yeah, I do that too. I figure that I want them laughing before I take the mic.
Well, yeah, there's different ways to accomplish that, and mine backfired that one show, but
Yes.
I'll probably still do it,
When,
someday. I can't do it on Zoom. It doesn't make any sense on Zoom. My hands don't even fit on the screen, so.
so
This is how we laugh, by the way, in Zoom. We always tell people that if you have to mute yourself, you can still laugh in American Sign Language, which is.
and this is like,
Well, this is different. This comes from Beat. This comes from the Beat generation, the Beat
beatniks.
culture, and I use it in stand-up. If you see this usually means true but not funny.
Wow.
Like, you're making an excellent point. They don't really think of it that way, but that's how I interpret it.
Sure.
Like, that is an excellent politically correct point, and I agree with it, but I'm not going to laugh. The difference is that laughing is involuntary. It's one of the great things about doing comedy is the goal is to elicit an involuntary response. Ideally you make them laugh, and if you're really good, you make them pee. Nobody's doing that voluntarily, which is what makes the outdoor Zoom shows with the honking of the horns and the lights and the clackers. You're changing a response from being involuntary to being voluntary. And that is it's like another step removed. So it's difficult to do those. I mean outdoors, like with cars and so on, which is just, it's a challenge. But if I can get them to laugh, that's involuntary and that's a real response. If they're doing this, they're thinking about it too much, and it's a voluntary response, and I'll take it. I'll take any response from humans, but generally this means I dig what you're laying down. Not laughing at it, but I dig it.
Oh, I see. Okay, well, so when was the first time that you realized that you were funny? Can you pinpoint that?
There were a lot of times I thought I was funny, and I wasn't. I'm talking way before I started doing stand-up. I remember I was into writing. Before I was into comedy or stand-up, I liked to write things I thought were funny. And I remember being at camp, and there was a big camp show, and I was obsessed at the time. I was obsessed with Saturday Night Live, early 80s. And I wanted to write a bunch of comedy news stuff like Weekend Update, but I didn't want to go on stage and do it. And a friend of mine was going to do it, and at the last minute, she chickened out. And I was like, and that was devastating. But I remember saying things I thought were funny that ended up being kind of hurtful because I didn't understand really how funny was supposed to work. And also I was just insensitive as a kid. I was insensitive. I remember this one girl, and I swear if I could remember her name, I would email her today and apologize. But I went to a camp. I went to a co-ed camp. There were units 1, 2, and 3 were girls, and unit 4 was the boys. And they were on the other side of the camp, as per usual. And there was a girl in our cabin who could kind of pass for a boy. And I thought that was cool. This was before non-gendered, non-binary, any of that. I thought it was very cool that she could pass for a boy. And at some point, I don't know how it came up, but I said, "Oh, you could totally be in Unit 4," which it turns out was incredibly hurtful. And I thought I was being funny, and then she was crying, and I felt terrible, and I didn't know what to do or say because I was just saying the wrong thing, trying to be funny. So now I don't direct it at any particular person, but I still say hurtful things. I just think they're funny now and don't direct them at anyone in particular.
That's cool. Yeah, that's really smart.
I
So
hope
now
so.
you have some filter.
I have a little bit of a filter. Oh, I have a little more of a filter. And also I've learned that I can't really say the truth if I'm, let's say, in a professional, like, day job type situation. I just keep my mouth shut. Because as soon as they think you're funny, then you're the office clown. And I just, honestly, no one needs to know what's going on in here most of the time.
What's the most trouble you got into at work? Because I've got stories out the yin yang.
Oh gosh. You know what? Well, there was one time, I don't know if it was funny so much as life-threatening. I used to work in radio, and I worked at a radio station in Pittsburgh, KDKA, and one of the very few K stations on the other side of the Mississippi. And it was the first commercial radio station. They started in 1921 to broadcast the election results. They were from a long time ago, and we started carrying Rush Limbaugh. And he was very big at the time, and quite political, and I was not a fan. And while he was there, when you start carrying Rush Limbaugh, he'll go to your station and do shows there for a week. And they basically locked down that half of the building. Like, you couldn't go anywhere near the studio. And that was fine with me. I didn't want to hear any of it. So one time I'm walking towards the newsroom, which is near the studio, and Rush comes walking from the studio, and we're in the kind of common hallway. And I'm passing him, and I don't know what I had on my face, but he assumed I was a fan, and he gave me sort of a, like that. And as soon as I passed him, I turned around and was like that. And just then, the program director came by the other way in the hallway and saw me and went, "No." And I was like, "Oh." And for years, I carried this regret that I could have ended it all. I would have been in jail, probably still. But I could have ended it all. So yeah, did not mourn that year. Was it last year? Did not mourn last year.
So you started in radio, and off camera, you told me that you did interviewing. Talk to me about your interviewing career.
Well, I used to write for newspapers. That was actually my first internship in college. Was at the Daily Hampshire Gazette in Massachusetts. I was there for a year, and they would give me, not a year, a summer, and they gave me all the great little puff pieces. Like I did an article about those little braids people were wearing at the time, little rat tail braids, because I had one, and they said, "Why don't you do a story?" And I interviewed a couple people, and that's out in the archive somewhere. And so I was writing for newspapers for some time, and my goal was always, and at the same time I was doing stand-up, like at occasional, I think we had weekly or monthly open mics, back in Massachusetts at the time. And I remember I had in my computer, which we had, which was all, green screen type stuff. Um, I had a list of jokes. I had all my material. I had a file called log, so nobody would figure out it was my monologue jokes. But then I was doing these, little silly little interviews like, oh, it's summer. Let's go interview people who work in the hottest jobs in the county. I went to the greenhouse and the furnace and that kind of, those are the kind of interviews I was doing. And then years later when I was when I was in Chicago, I started in Pittsburgh. I would just find excuses to write about comics. And I was never like the comedy critic, but I would write previews. I would write interviews ahead of time because I wanted to promote their shows.
Nice.
And the basic rule was I could write about any show I wasn't on because it was a very small town, even Pittsburgh. And once in a while I would write about a show and then after that end up being booked on it. So I'd have to go to the paper and go like, sorry, it turns out I'm on this one. So it was a little weird. But I wrote, and then later I was writing about comics in Chicago, and I was writing for, there used to be a comedy trade paper called Just for Laughs. It predates the festival. It was out of Mill Valley, California. And I was in, Pittsburgh at the time, so that was a big freaking deal. So I got to write about comics for them. I interviewed Gilbert Gottfried for them. I interviewed George Carlin for them. I interviewed Bob Goldthwait for them, and I still know Bob. We've actually, chatted at shows. He's a swell guy.
That's nice. What was it like interviewing George Carlin?
Oh, I was like, this was by phone, and I had a little thing. I had a recording device. It was like basically a suction cup you'd stick on the end of a receiver, and it would, record. And I'd been a fan of Carlin since I could literally remember. I think I saw him in concert when I was 13. I was already that big of a fan, and it was like basically talking to God.
Yeah.
It was like the be all end all of everything I believed. And I don't even remember what I asked him or how stupid I came across, but I got to talk to him.
Wow. That's so awesome. What do you remember anything he said that touched you?
I don't remember in that interview, but a while after that, I interviewed him for a show where he was coming to Pittsburgh. And because of that, I got to meet him before the show for about, a minute. And I brought a friend of mine with me. And my friend and I were in an improv group together. And we mentioned that to him. And, he's like, oh, great. And he was super sweet, Wow. I learned many, many years later that his whole approach to meeting fans was, this is about them, not you. So he was always extremely sweet to fans, and he was really nice to us and like, oh, it's great. Oh, you do improv. And as we left, he told us, keep kicking him in the ass. And a friend of ours took a photo of that, and and I have the photo of my friend and I with George Carlin. And I'm in my big comic relief t-shirt. and then we have that photo and put it on a t-shirt, and under it says, keep kicking him in the ass.
Oh, that is a wonderful story.
Yeah, he was amazing. He was just amazing.
One time I was in a gym at a Hilton, and he was in there exercising. And I was over here looking at the reflection, and I was like, that looks like this side of his face. So I went to another machine on the other side, and it still looked like him. So I asked the guy next to me, I said, that looks like George Carlin. He goes, it is. I said, how do you know? And he goes, I'm his road manager.
Oh my God.
So I said, what's he like? I said, what's he like? And he goes, he's a pain in the ass.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I never had to deal with the drinking and drugs version of George Carlin. I just got to be the fan version.
Yes. But
Where did this happen, though?
It happened at a Hilton Hotel in Seattle, Washington.
Seattle, okay. Because I was going to say, if it was here in LA or anywhere near here, you don't say or do anything. They're just, this is where you don't mess with them. But yeah, in Seattle, a fair game. Yeah.
Yeah. I should have not even tried to get him to smile or look at me, but because he was not in the space where he wanted to talk. He was in the gym.
Yeah, that's
it. That's his own time. So when did you actually start your own stand-up? Because you went on stage and
I
you did
tried to
more.
start when I was 16. My high school had a thing called the cabaret every spring, and I tried to do it when I was 16 and I didn't understand a damn thing about it. My theory was I would audition with a George Carlin bit, and then if I got in, I'd write material. And thank God Mr. Maggs, the director, was smarter than that. I did the Carlin bit called Icebox Man, where he talks about looking in the fridge. Remember iceboxes?
Oh yeah, I
Uh,
remember
Great
Icebox.
bit, and I really learned it. I could, because I had these albums, I would just play them over and over and over and over, and I would just, I remember listening to George Carlin while loading wood from outside, in the New England winters, just having a cassette of Carlin that I would listen to over and over. So I auditioned with that, and I definitely, I got laughs from the people who were, running the auditions, but the director, in his wisdom, said no. And then the next year, I came back with material I had written, and got into the cabaret and got to do 2 nights of, my set doing stand up, and so that was my official debut, was when I was 17. And at the time, there was an open mic that happened once a month called the Comedy Crunch, and I started going to that, and with the same material that killed in front of a high school audience, and guess what? Died a painful death many times. But I kept doing it, and then the next year I went to college. I started doing open mics in Pittsburgh, and I had to kind of sneak in because I was underage, very underage. Until my senior year, I was underage. But I got to where it's like they kind of knew me, so they let me do open mics. And again, at the time, it was like, maybe 1 or 2 mics a week if you were lucky. And that's what I was doing all through college. And before I graduated, I was occasionally getting paid gigs, and kept doing that for a while. And yeah, so that's how I tried producing shows at college, and they were terrible. And I did my senior year. I did get onto the activities committee, and I got to book comics for the college, which. At the time, they were all like, "We want Jay Leno." I'm like, "Great. Do you have $25,000? Because that's what it's going to take." Well, I think at the time it was like 10,000. Our budget was 2,000. And what I did was I had a friend who had been a Pittsburgh comic who had just moved to L.A. And I called him. I said, "Hey, who can I afford who's great in L.A. and willing to come to Pittsburgh?" And he gave me 2 names, and I booked both of them. He gave me Rob Schneider and
Wow.
Tom Kenny. And they were absolutely unknown at the time, and I booked both of them each for $1,000. And they were great. And so now, so then when they became big, all my friends in college were able to say, "Hey, you booked them." So that was a point of pride. But
Yes.
yeah. And I got to see Tom Kenny many, 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 many years later, like a couple years ago. And it was so funny because I was like, "Hi, you don't remember me," but he's like, "Why do I recognize you?" And I said, "You played my college." And he went, "Carnegie Mellon." I'm like, "Yeah, that was us." He's like, "That was the greatest show ever." So he remembered that.
Oh my
So yeah,
gosh.
it was
That was
crazy.
a lot of money back then, right? It's a
A
lot of
thousand
money
bucks.
now.
That was good college money at the time. I mean, college gigs have always paid way more than human gigs. But that was pretty, yeah, that was pretty damn good money at the time, which was 1989.
Yeah. I just turned 70, so I think I got a few on you.
That's
So
right. Happy birthday.
thank you.
I forgot
Well,
about that. Yay. I just turned not 70. Close enough.
so talk to me about all the funny things that happened in your comedy career.
Oh, well, the thing is that once you start doing comedy, it's not funny anymore. I mean, I've had a lot of fun things happen. I've had, done a lot of weird things, and, gotten mixed up in some weird things. But here's the thing. A lot of the great road stories come from getting drunk, and I don't drink.
Me neither.
So I
I might
missed
have
out
one
on.
drink and that's it.
Yeah, when I say I don't drink, I mean like I have champagne maybe once a year, and I had a Kahlua and cream once at my grandmother's insistence. but that's about the extent of it. So I never got wild and crazy on the road or anything like that. Honestly, I'm like, I can't even think of anything particularly funny that I can think of. I know, I mean, I have, this is in my bio. This is how much I love this, what this story is that, I want to say like 92, right before, Johnny Carson ended his show or left the Tonight Show. Mm-hmm. I remember this because I was working with a headliner whose big closer, was an impression of Johnny Carson, a really good one. Yeah, and we were all like, "Oh man, he's only like next year, right?" And he was like, "Yeah, I know, but that was his." So that was the headliner, and the feature was Patton Oswalt, who was a kid at the time, a kid living in San Francisco, and the show we were doing, or the shows I should say, the weekend was in Virginia, in a town where what was the name of the town? There's a college there, and he had gone to that college, so he knew the town, and he took us to the best. He knew where the best sushi was. We went there, and I just remember thinking, this feature act, and for those of you not into comedy, the feature's the opening act. I was the MC. This was back in the day when MCs were on the road. That actually happened. So I was the MC. Patton was the feature, and the other guy, his name was Bill King. He was the headliner. But Patton, just the feature, funniest human I'd ever seen in my life. I just remember thinking at the time, like, this guy, just this guy. And on top of that, nicest guy ever. Like, we were talking about music, and I was just getting into They Might Be Giants, and he was an expert, and he knew all about them, and he made me a mixtape. Can you imagine? He made me a cassette, a mixtape, from, with his old address in San Francisco on it. It was he was amazing, and don't think he'd recognize me to see me anymore. I think I know Bobcat a little bit better than I know Patton, but these are all people that they were my gods, and getting to meet them occasionally as I got older was it was amazing. They're still, I'm still, even to this day, if I go see Bobcat, I'm still like, you're so cool. I'm a dork. I'm a comedy dork. And when I'm when I'm emceeing shows or doing shows with big names, I have to be like, hi, I am a normal person working with you. A couple weeks ago, I was running tech on a show for Bill Burr, and I had to pretend like he was a person. and I'm working with him again this weekend, and I still have to be like, hello, comedy god who beams with the intensity of 1,000 suns. You are a person, and I shall address you as such. I'm still a comedy dork, I'm still a total comedy nerd, but I'm trying to be all professional and stuff.
Yeah, I heard Bill Burr being interviewed, and somebody said, what do you think about women that complain about, and he said, tell them to get their own things and shut up. I'm like,
whatever. The thing is, when you're doing an interview, you're not 100% yourself when you're good at it. I'm not good at it, so this is kind of me what you're getting here, but
I love it.
Someone like Bill Burr is like, he's got his answers ready to go, and
he does. Yeah, I felt that was coming more from his persona than him.
Yeah, it is very much his persona. He has a whole bit about abortion, which is, as a pro-choice activist, I could choose to be offended by it, but I'm more like, that's his bit, that's his persona, and honestly, what he really believes about abortion, none of my freaking business. That's how it works. And he has some funny points that are all true. So,
exactly.
Not for me to say. But
that's the way we should all be about comedy. We should be discerning and let the person have their own opinion.
Yeah. And I've totally pissed off fans and lost at least one club because of my outspoken opinions. So, but there's a certain point at which it's like, do I really want to work for a club manager who believes life begins at conception? Not really. That's a loss. That's a bearable loss. Yeah.
Yeah. I was told by one club not to tell anybody ever again that I'm half Jewish because there's no such thing. And I'm like, listen, it's my life. That's the way I choose. That's the crazy way I look at it. And besides, no, the Jewish people didn't want me, and neither did the Christians. So this is my mantra. I'm half Jewish.
Yeah, well, the thing about Judaism that people don't realize is that Judaism is a religion. Being Jewish is a heritage. It's one of the few things that's both. Like, you can be made Jewish or born Jewish, and they're completely different things. It's not like, there's no like Muslim country. Like you are Muslim or you are not. And, whether or not you're born that way doesn't identify you as such. I am absolutely born Jewish. I am from Jewish descent. Nothing to do with the religion. So
Yes.
it's weird that way.
Yeah, it is. So that's been fun, having people. I've had a club tell me that they don't care how funny I get, their people will never want to hear me talk.
Wow. Yeah, that's a name names. What club was that? Because I never want to go there in my life. Do they still exist?
Mm-hmm. Starts with an H in Portland. It's
I'm gonna have to
big.
look that up.
Something you blow up balloons with.
What? When was that?
Oh, 3 years ago.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to have to rethink some stuff. That's good to know. That's kind of scary. I have to believe that was more one manager than the club policy.
Right.
Because that would be a really limiting thing in comedy.
So you know what I'm out to prove? I'm going back there one day.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I'll get my revenge because I will kill on that stage.
I know you will. I mean, that's the thing. So many people, here's the thing, you can't really see it as revenge. I mean, and this goes for any level of success, is that if your success is revenge motivated, you're going to be disappointed, because you could have the greatest show ever to stick it to someone, and that someone is not going to care or notice or whatever. It doesn't matter.
It's proving to myself that I am.
You have to be
worthy.
doing it for yourself. Yeah, you have to be able to say, I'm funny because I decided I was going to be funny and I worked at it and here I am and now I'm funny. And even then, I honestly, for most comedians, like, I don't know what level of success constitutes success. I had somebody tell me, it's like, oh, you're going to be at the top of comedy. I'm like, there is no top. There's no one definition. There is no best comedian ever. There's no definition like that. It's not like you become the CEO of comedy. I mean, obviously there are top names, and for every huge comic, there's people who will tell you they're not funny. There's people who say Carlin's not funny, Patton Oswalt's not funny. You just who's funny. Whatever, some other guy who they think is funny. So it's like any art. You can't say Picasso was better than Rembrandt because they're just not comparable. No two great painters are truly, no artists are really truly comparable. It's art. It's subjective. It's always gonna be. So you're gonna say, I'm gonna be better because it'll piss off that person. It's like, well, that person doesn't care.
No, but I just want to prove that club will love me when I get good enough.
I hope that brings you happiness.
Yeah, it will. Yeah. So what is something that has happened in your comedy life that you'll never forget? Have you gone and entertained the troops or hospital sick people, and anything that you'll never forget, something a fan said or another comedian? Or
oh my goodness, I think a couple years after I moved here about 3.5 years ago to LA.
Mm-hmm.
And I met a younger woman comic, 20s kind of a thing, and she told me that that I inspired her to start comedy. And I couldn't believe that, because I was, I'm nobody, and I have no big TV credits. I'm not influential, but she had seen me at a couple of clubs and thought, I want to start comedy. And I thought that was amazing. And I remember telling another comic who had inspired me to restart, because I quit for 11 years in the middle. And I started back up again about 5 years ago. And I remember telling him, I said, look, you know how I've told you that you inspired me to come back to comedy? Well, somebody just told me that I inspired her to start doing comedy. So it's like you're her grand inspiration.
That's so cool.
It's just, that is very important to me to think that to present comedy in a positive way. I know it's not something everyone can do. I know that you can't simply work at it and get better. Not everyone does. Some people will work and work and work and not get better. And then some people who you think aren't going to get better do, and then people who you do think are going to get better don't. It's very unpredictable, and it depends how much you're going to work on it, and then what your whole persona is, and whether or not you have control over that persona. So many different things decide whether or not you're successful in any metric. So to say, this person's going to make it, this person's not, you can't. So to inspire someone to do it, whether or not they, make it big or whatever, doesn't matter. It's like I inspired someone to try something, and I love that. I love that there are people who, and then there are people who, just see it and like it and don't feel that they have to do it. And they tell me that, like, oh my God, you're the funniest person. And that's just fun. It just feels good that you said something, you thought of something, and you wrote it down, and then you said it, and it had an impact on people beyond just the initial involuntary response of laughter. That made them think. It made them buy a pin that says nobody's mom. Anything like that. That just anything that you feel where you have like any kind of positive impact, that just feels really good.
Yes, yes. So when you've traveled around and you've seen different clubs and different groups of people, one of my favorite questions, I'm still trying to get the real guru answer. So now's your chance. Okay. Whenever you get off stage and you have lackluster results, some senior comedian will say, well, it's okay, you just need to learn to read the room. And it's like that mirage out there, the oasis, it moves when you get near. So I'm lucky to have found my persona, and I'm still trying to field out the nugget behind reading the room. And so I want to ask everybody what their idea of reading the room is, because somewhere along the line, I'm going to go, you know what, that's it.
Well, the thing is, the room changes minute to minute, and you kind of have to, I think it's a combination of, seeing and hearing and feeling. And some of it is like, where am I? Am I in the deep South? Am I in a city? Am I in the country? That will affect kind of the general feeling of the room. You might say something that turns them against you, and you can feel it just in the silence, or in the nature of the silence. Is it a total rapt silence, or is it I'm really want to answer my phone silence? I wish I could explain it better than that.
No, I get it. I've heard different silences.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like, if you go, let's say you're in the ocean. Okay, so I like scuba diving, so I'm very aware of the water and the ocean. And you get in the water, you can immediately tell, is it hot? Is it cold? Is there a current in this direction or that direction? Is it pulling you in? Is it pushing you out? Is it salt or fresh water? There's a huge difference in the way it feels. All of those things you just kind of feel. And you learn to kind of feel that in the audience that you're swimming in. Am I going to, and there are comedians who can just put that audience in a bucket and pour them where they want it. And there are some of us who are just kind of, we can stay afloat and, kind of keep going and, yay, and, let's have a good time, and I'm not going to drown in this. That's kind of where I am right now. And part of that, honestly, my eyesight is not great. Like, I know people who can talk to human individuals in the audience. I can see faces, and I can usually see if they're smiling, but usually the lights blind me so much. And again, that comes from experience. Ask me again in 10 years whether or not my eyes are better or the lights are less. I don't know, but like I generally still address an audience as a crowd, and there are better comics who can address individuals in the audience. And that's a different level of skill that maybe I'll get someday. Like if you see someone like Paula Poundstone will talk to people in the audience. A lot of her act is sometimes just crowd work, and she remembers every name and every story of everyone she talks to, so she can make callbacks. 20 minutes later, she'll go, "Oh, that's like what Susan said about did it." Amazing. Just even to be able to recognize people and remember names, that alone is a skill I just don't have. So,
Wow.
and I think part of that is just her experience, and part of that is just who she is. She's just a more skilled human. So I wish I could give a better definition of,
I
reading the
like that.
room is sometimes it's as simple as it's like, so and so died, don't make fun of it. Read the room.
Mm-hmm.
But and other times it's just, oh, this town doesn't want to hear about my anti-choice material or my pro-choice material, and I hate to even give the advice. It's like, yeah, maybe don't do all your stuff all the time, but sometimes you kind of have to be reading the room and decide whether or not that's a chance you want to take.
Yes.
It's like, do I want to keep working here this week, or do I want to do my normal act? Like I have a few bits that are just so dirty and stupid. I don't generally do them, but let's say I'm in a bar and that's clearly what they're responding to. It's like, okay, I'm going to do that bit because I know this is what you want to hear. You can have this. You're not going to want to hear my language bit. You don't want to hear linguistics. You want to hear dick jokes. Got it, on it. Here you go.
One time I was asked if I could, by a comedian who happens to be of color, if I could do an urban audience. I was like, yeah, I love that. And I wrote a whole bunch of material for the night,
Ooh.
just for the occasion. Got there and everybody was white as a ghost. They weren't people of color.
Well, he never said black, did he? He said urban. So
Yes,
that's different. You never
yes.
know.
And I was
Uh,
like, did you mean Keith Urban?
that's funny.
Thanks.
Honestly, one of the best compliments I ever got, and this was in my old career, this is before I quit. Somebody once told me, it's like, you are so good, you could play a black room.
Wow.
And at the moment, I really didn't know what to think about that. But now I'm like, yeah, I think I could pull that off. I've done predominantly black rooms and done okay. I wouldn't say it's my forte. It's definitely a different style. Which is not to say there isn't a lot of overlap. I mean, funny
Yeah.
is funny, but there are, again, you read the room. What are they responding to? What do they want to hear from you? What do they not want to hear from you? There are definitely white privilege jokes that I have, and I try to be aware of them. I try to keep everything rather to a broader appeal and not, narrow anything down. I do kind of rag on hipsters a little bit, but that's,
Me too.
because they're kids. What do you want? Um, yeah, and again, it comes down to what fits your style and how much you want to adjust that style to fit a given room.
Yes.
And I'm not flexible enough to adjust for every possible situation, so there's simply going to be rooms where I may not do as well.
Exactly. Exactly. The hardest thing for me to do is to figure out what married people want, because I'm not, and I haven't been since 1980. It's like, I'm here to talk about my life. You guys are here to listen to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm been single my whole life, and here's the thing: it's like you are what you are, and if that's not what they want, they shouldn't have hired you. I'm always real clear if I'm hired for like a private gig, like, here's what I do, here's what I talk about. Is that what you want to hear? Because if not, I'll write something out. No, I've never written anything specifically for a gig, but I've certainly learned what I should not do in certain situations. And especially like if it comes to being clean. If the audience wants to hear about my sex life and hear me rag on my husband, you're not going to get that. That's just not what I do.
Yeah.
But that said, I have successfully played literal churches. So,
What's the craziest thing that ever came out of your mouth that you did not plan to say? And then
oh,
what's your favorite joke you this is the one that after that.
Yeah.
Favorite joke you refuse to drop from doing, and it gets lackluster, but it's mainly for you.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't even think. I mean, it's hard to say what I have dropped or haven't because my act has changed. Well, I won't say my act has changed in the last year. I've just written a bunch of new stuff by necessity. For written stuff for Zoom and just written stuff that I've only done on Zoom. So I have older stuff I just haven't done because because I've been working on newer stuff, normal comics, bigger comics will record an album and then put that old material away and work on new stuff. I never recorded anything, but there's a bunch of stuff I just haven't done in a while. Um, and I have a joke that I've only done a few times. Well, I used to do it all the time because it was the first bit I wrote when I came back, and it's about abortion and being among other things, being an escort. No, not that kind, but thank you. Being a clinic escort. So I have a whole bit about that. And honestly, there's a time and a place to talk about abortion and abortion rights, and a lot of times that place is not on stage. Um, so I have a whole bit about that I was doing for a long time, and then I stopped doing because I wrote other stuff. But then a couple years ago, I was in a contest, and there just happened to be a bunch of abortion rights news. Something big had happened in the Supreme Court, so I hauled that bit out, and that night it crushed. But I can't do it all the time. And um, one of the lines in that uh, had to do with I I won't get into all the specifics, but there was a line where um, a woman in the audience had a response that was much funnier than anything I could have said. So now that's part of the bit.
Yep.
So I love when that happens. I love when the audience gives you a gift like that. And again, that's a thing that I never could have written. It's a thing that has to come to you during a show. And I love shows where things happen that just propel the bit at the moment, but also become a thing that you can kind of keep. So
Too.
that's always fun. I cannot think of a specific instance of that happening other than that.
That's really good. You kind of tied those two questions together. So,
I guess I did.
yeah. What do you have in mind to accomplish in your life? What do you have to accomplish to feel like you lived up to your purpose in life?
Oh, well, I don't know what my purpose ever was. I just know what I'm doing now. Um, I would really like to develop a proper headlining set. I mean, you can do an hour, but you're not necessarily headlining. And you can do 45 minutes, you can headline and not necessarily have an hour, and like I definitely have 45 minutes to an hour of material, but I'm not a headliner. And that definition changes. That definition is, are you a draw? And to me, the definition is partly are you a draw, but also do you kind of have a cohesive set? Like if somebody listens to it, like, oh, that is definitely an Amanda Cohen joke. I don't think I have that yet, and I'm working on that. But I feel like to get to that, I need exposure. I would love to get TV. I would love to do Colbert, only because Stephen Colbert and I have friends in common, and I would love to, hey,
Yeah.
remember this, that kind of thing. Um, like I'll never, the first time I got to actually talk to Dana Gould, I found out we knew some dead people in common, and and Stephen Colbert and I know some dead people in common, and I would love to chat with him about that and use that as an excuse to get on the show.
Yeah.
But also I've kind of narrowed it down to Colbert because I look like this and I'm this age, and Colbert is the one who kind of is more likely to take chances on slightly off the beaten path stand-ups. So that's kind of my goal. I would love to do that. Really, honestly, I would not turn down any TV anything at this point. I need, as the kids say, I need credits. But also, I mean, I really see myself as more of a writer, and I would love to write for someone or with someone, or like every comedian in LA, I have a couple of pilots I would love to get read. Um, And like I've thought about trying to pursue late night writing, but topical jokes are not, I don't really enjoy those as much because they're literally topical. They work that night. And while I feel like I can crank some of them out, I could never do them in the volume that late night TV writers really do. So, yeah, I would love to do punch up. I would love to like fix other people's scripts. I'm much better at fixing than building. I'd love to do that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think if I were, and also, I mean, look at this face. This face belongs in a writer's room, if anywhere. This is not a big TV face. Although I did have someone in LA stop me and say, "I loved you on that commercial," and I was like, "I haven't done any commercials, but thank you." I'm like, and she's like, "No, I saw you." I'm like, "No, I'd remember the check if I had done that." So apparently, I look like I could have been in a commercial, but I'm not really pursuing that very hard. Because I know how freaking hard it is, and it's not, I cannot put in the effort and time needed to get anywhere in that. So I'm really just concentrating on stand-up and some stand-up production. Zoom has been big. I love producing Zoom shows. I've been actually doing that for a while in addition to appearing. So, I mean, the thing is, it's like you can set goals, but you can also have to be, enjoy what you get to do. So
Exactly.
my big overall goal, I want to make a living. I want to make a living making people laugh, and beyond that is, just luck. Beyond that would be swell, but if I'm making a living making people laugh, then I'm happy.
That's great. So where do you want traction on social media?
On social media, well, I'm anti-social media. So no, that's not true. I'm old, so I'm on Facebook. Apparently all the kids are on the TikTok, and I've tried a couple TikTok videos, but man, what can I say? I'm not into the 9:16 orientation of the camera. That's just wrong. Everyone knows this is video, this is a phone. So I'm on the Facebook. Just look me up on the Facebook. There's only a few Amanda Cohens, and I'm the one who looks like this. And I'm on the YouTube. I've got some videos on the YouTube. Again, I'm not big enough to have my own named channel, but if you Google me on the YouTube, if you do choose to Google me, I am not a doo-wop singer, and I am not the author of a vegetarian cookbook called Dirt Candy. There's plenty of Amanda Cohens out there. Make sure you pick the one that you want. My website is amandacomedy.com. I'm on the Insta and the Twitter as Amanda Cohen 27, and 27, by the way, that's a Weird Al reference.
So you're on Instagram and where?
Twitter.
And Twitter, you're considered. What's your name there? Your handle?
Amanda Cohen 27.
And what is that? A Weird Al?
Yeah, that's a Weird Al reference. Of course, there was, somebody already had Amanda Cohen, so they're like, well, why don't you pick Amanda Cohen 13 or something? And I went with 27 because fans of Weird Al know that 27 magically became associated with Weird Al because he used it a couple times in songs because it's a funny number. And then people started noticing 27's creeping in other ways, and some of it was on purpose and most of it wasn't, so he just kind of adopted that as his number. So that's 27 means Weird Al.
Cool. So it's Instagram, Twitter, Amanda Cohen 27.
Yep. AMANDACOHEN 27.
27. Perfect. And what do you have coming up? So let's say somebody's out there today watching, and you get 300 or 500 people watching this video, and they are like, I'd like to watch her this week. Where can they catch you?
Well, this week, today being March 23rd, I am hosting Flappers Comedy Club on Friday. I forget if it's at 5 or 7 or both, but they've been having me host on Fridays. So if you go to flapperscomedy.com, like I said, I'm usually doing Fridays. I host an open mic on Sundays. and occasional other scattered shows here and there. Just go to, if you're not sure, go to amandacomedy.com, and I occasionally update that list. The list is kind of slow right now because waiting for clubs to open. Right now, we're in a place where it's like, well, I'm still booking Zoom shows, but I want to book human shows. And clubs are like, well, we want to book human shows, but the tier might change. And I'm not willing to go to Florida just yet. So it's, it's kind of tenuous right now. But honestly, just, hit me up on the Facebooks or on the Instas or on the Twits and say, where the hell are you? And I will tell you.
Got it.
Not with the location. I won't tell you I'm at the Ralph's on Vineland. I'm not going to be that specific, but I'll tell you where I'm going to be performing.
So you can follow her, but don't follow her down the street.
Don't follow me down the street unless you have, something really nice to say.
And a bunch of flowers.
Yeah, or an important question. I'm always willing to answer questions. I love answering questions. I love giving my useless advice. Because generally speaking, I support comedians. You got to suck pretty bad for me to not want to, give you information about comedy. I don't believe in being a gatekeeper. Beyond, if you're not funny, I'm not going to book you on a show. But I'm not trying to hide any part of it from anybody of what I know. I think it's important that, if you have questions about comedy, by all means, ask a professional. And if they blow you off, then come to me.
You are a delight, and thank you so much for honoring the questions I had. So I look up to you.
Thank you, Linda. I think you're pretty freaking awesome, and
Thank you.
I hope to be doing comedy when I'm your age and even older if that exists.
Yeah, I like to say that my twin brother turned 70. I'm 21 times 3 plus 7.
That's complicated. I just say I'm this age.
I like how math confuses people. It's been confusing me. Now I'm going to use it on others.
Yeah, I mean, it's how old I am is not a big mystery in that I don't really hide it, as you can see. When I stop coloring my hair, but nobody needs specific numbers. Numbers are irrelevant because whenever you say what age number, specifically you are on stage, anytime you talk about your age, just realize that half the people are going to go, child, and the other half are going to go, boomer or old person or whatever. It doesn't matter. You're never going to, you can kind of talk about your age group, but, I'm clearly, like a joke I wrote a few years ago, hint, was I am now AARP years old. Some of you know what that means. The rest of you are like, why is she doing Roman numerals? I don't know.
My AARP bag can vote.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good way to put it. I never got the AARP bag. I throw that in the trash immediately because I have yet to reach an age where I think I need any of that stuff.
They looked at me and said, "You're the bag."
You're the bag. Yeah, that's a 50s joke. Yeah, old bag.
Thank you so much, Amanda Cohen. I'll put this out with all those things you said about social media.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, Linda. You are amazing for doing this. Thank you so much for considering me worthy of an interview. I appreciate it.
I'm so glad to get to know you all to myself with a few onlookers.
Well, you know what? If you have any other questions just for you, I'm more than happy to try and address anything you want to know.
I might just take you up on that. Thank you so much. You're a doll.
Thank
you so much.
You're a doll.
I miss you already.
Oh, I'm not going anywhere. Don't worry.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.